Hi everyone, I'm John Fenzel and we're here at Green's Drugstore in Bedford, Virginia, and I'm with Ken Parker, who is the curator for the Bedford Boys Tribute Center. Hi Ken, could you just introduce yourself here?
Certainly, John. My name's Ken Parker, and my wife Linda and I are the curators of the brand new Bedford Boys Tribute Center, and we're located in the most iconic and historic building in downtown Bedford, Virginia, pertaining to Company A, the Bedford Boys of the 116th Infantry Regiment, the old Stonewall Brigade dating back to the Civil War. And these young men, 19 total in Company A, were the first ones to hit Dog Green sector of Omaha Beach at 6:36 on the morning of Tuesday, June the 6th, 1944. D-Day, the invasion at Normandy, and when the ramps went down in 9 minutes, 19 boys from Bedford were lost. Right, Green's Drugstore dating back through the 20s, the 30s, and then the Green family bought the drugstore 1942. And in those years of the 40s and the 50s and the 60s into the 70s, Green's Drugstore was the hub of downtown Bedford. All the 37 Bedford boys in Company A, they worked here, they dated here, they fun and frolicked here, and also their families. If they didn't live in town, they were surrounding farming families within 4 or 5 mile radius, and they'd do their shopping here. And without a doubt, this was the economic, social, this was everything center of downtown Bedford.
So all of the Bedford boys hung out here.
This was it. These 37 boys' footprints are all inside a Green's Drugstore, and that portion of the drugstore, that's the new Tribute Center. Every Monday night in the basement of the courthouse, half a block up east of us, the Company A had their drill night. In the basement of the courthouse was their armory. And you got to remember, it's the mid-30s, post-Depression. They were paid $1 every Monday night. That was good money to help the families and also get a soda fountain ice cream drink or something too. And Saturday afternoons, they brought their dates here after the Saturday movie matinees. And like I say, this was the hub of Bedford.
Ken, can you talk a little bit about yours and your wife's Linda's decision to come here to Bedford? Because you're not from Bedford, are you?
And that's correct, I think, because of my accent. That's easily identifiable. I'm from New Jersey, South Jersey. My wife is from the East Coast. But how this all started was well over, not quite a year and a half ago. We had made plans to go to Normandy, in fact, for this week's celebration of the 75th anniversary of the invasion. We signed up for that trip a year ago last October. However, beginning in a little over a year ago, January, February of 18, I started doing military readings of books on the invasion to prep ourselves for the trip. And it was during that time, in fact, I read 14 books, but book number 9 was the one that gripped us. That was Alex Kershaw's book entitled The Bedford Boys. Fantastic. No finer job could be done. But in that book, we learned of Company A for the first time. So in good faith, if you will, or might sound a little noble, but we thought we can't go over to Normandy without maybe contacting somebody in Bedford if they'd like us to take something to put on their uncle's graves if they couldn't make the trip. Problem was, we didn't know anybody in Virginia, let alone Bedford. I didn't even know where Bedford was. But on April the 6th, and that's the exact date, we composed a letter and mailed a 2-page letter to 53 churches in Bedford, figuring they had the archival records of their membership through the years, seeking information to contact us in Oklahoma City, where we were living at the time. The phone just came off the hook. Call after call after call, way over 24 phone calls from nieces and nephews of the Bedford boys. And these phone calls, one second you're falling off the chair laughing at the stories that the families are saying about their uncles. or reaching for Kleenex the next 30 seconds. So the emotion was tremendous. But from those calls, we learned that these relatives have stories that have never been published, never been told, have to be told in order to protect the legacies of their uncles. Then we decided to write a book. And that's how this all began. So we came to Bedford 9 months ago. We began our research. We interviewed these nieces and nephews. And we found out in short order we couldn't commute between Oklahoma City and Bedford. So January 17th, here 4 months ago, whatever it was, we moved to Bedford. And on February the 1st, we began construction here of restoring Green's Drugstore the way it was the summer of 1944, and the front portion of the Green's Drugstore into the new Bedford Boys Tribute Center. One particular story, and it involves the same family, and it's the Reynolds family. Fortunately, there are still 6 siblings of the original Bedford Boys still living, 5 sisters and 1 brother. One of the sisters is Marguerite Reynolds Cottrell. She was 4 years old when her brother, little Jack Reynolds, left to go overseas. And the family had a big family breakfast on the day for his last visit before shipping out on the Queen Mary to go over to England for training for the invasion September of 42. And Marguerite was only 4 years old. And she was sitting out on the front step because she didn't want her brother to forget her. Of which, come time for little Jack to leave, he came out on the front porch with the family and saw her and picked her up and said, "Marguerite, you be a good little girl till I get home." Unfortunately, Jack did not return home. That's one story. But from that also, we have a tremendous story about watches, wristwatches, involving little Jack and the executive officer, Lieutenant Nance. And the next part involving little Jack Reynolds is only 5'5", 112 pounds, run like a deer though. And he was in the guard unit, got his dollar every Monday night. 5'5", 112 pounds, he couldn't really qualify for anybody's army at any time, but he did. He was with his buddies in Company A. But because he could run so fast, he was made the company runner. And the interesting story is this, and Marguerite, his sister, filled us in with these historical facts, okay? Shortly before the invasion, now the entire company is in England. They have completed 20 months of training, and now they're getting ready to board their troop ship out of Weymouth Harbor. They had marched and transported down from Ivy Bridge, which was the English village that they stayed in during most of their training, Slapton Sands, where they practiced invasion techniques. Now they're in Weymouth Harbor getting ready to board their troop ship, the Empire Javelin, to take them across the channel and wait Eisenhower's word to go. Little Jack went up to Lieutenant Ray Nance, the company's executive officer, and says, "Lieutenant, I know the captain and you want me to run fast, and I can run fast. The problem is I can't tell time. I don't have a watch. I can't coordinate things." Well, the day before that, Lieutenant Nance had gotten his order from the local company PX, okay, Post Exchange. And that order was 2 items. One was a brand new Elgin watch, and the second was a Zippo lighter. So Lieutenant Nance told little Jack, "Don't worry, little Jack, I just got my new watch. Here it is." And Lieutenant Nance gave little Jack his new Elgin watch. That watch Jack was wearing along with his mother's pocket Bible when he was shot and killed on the beach of Normandy. John Nance, Lieutenant Nance's son, came into the Tribute Center 2 weeks ago, today, Tuesday, and actually phenomenally made history again, because in the display case for his father, that we have reserved for his father, Lieutenant Nance, John Nance brought in his father's watch, his old watch that he was wearing when little Jack came up to him. Well, Lieutenant Nance kept that watch on and made the invasion landing. So when John Nance brought his dad's watch in, Marguerite had already brought in Little Jack's new Elgin watch that he was wearing. Was the first time that these two watches were brought back together in 75 years, and the last time was on Omaha Beach at 6:36 a.m. Tuesday, June the 6th, D-Day.
And that watch stopped at that time.
That is correct.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. That both families still had the watches, and because the new Tribute Center were able to bring them back together again.
So in many respects, it's like coming home, isn't it?
It is. Totally so, and it defies the imagination what it's done for Lynn and I in this just wonderful experience. It has taught us totally new definitions of the word humbleness. These families want to protect the legacies of their loved ones, their uncles, and they want to do it in a way that will give them the best positive educational benefit for younger generations coming up to learn about the sacrifices of the greatest generation.
Now, Ken, we talked about the surrounding towns, but can you talk a little bit about the significance of Bedford, Virginia?
Right. Bedford, Virginia is right in the heart, dead center of Bedford County. Bedford County is a large county, about, I think I'm correct, or pretty close, about 746 square miles. So it's a large county in the center of the state of Virginia. During World War II, had a population of about 30,000 population. 4,000 residents were in the armed forces from the county in all theaters of operations during the entire war. Okay, that seems to be a little higher proportion. However, the town of Bedford, as with many other small towns in the whole state of Virginia, young men were members of the National Guard. So really, few were drafted as much as already before the war being in the National Guard. But then in February of 41 was federalized under FDR's orders. Now the terms and conditions, if you want to call it that, in that federalization was a preparatory executive order of the president, but those called up from Guard units would only serve for a one-year commitment and then be discharged, and that would be it.
They were extended.
But then,
indefinitely.
10 months, that's right. 10 months later, Pearl Harbor came, and then the boys knew they were in for the duration of the war. Right. Now, Bedford had a population of 3,200. 19 of Company A, the Bedford Boys, were lost in the first 9 minutes. Okay, now on a per capita basis, Lynchburg, Company B of the 1st Battalion, they lost 18. Company D, Roanoke, lost 16. But they were in the tens of thousands of population, you see. Bedford's right between them, 30 miles right in the center between east and west of Lynchburg and Roanoke, only 3,200 in population. So losing 19 out of 32 was way over the top proportion. And Bedford suffered during the whole World War, losing the most per capita of any town and city in the United States. And that is why today Congress passed a resolution to have the National D-Day Memorial right here in Bedford.